Do you like mysteries? To wander through the enigmatic mist of the inexplicable? Great. I'm Merc, and here you'll find what you're looking for. Welcome to my domains. The truth dissolves into the mist.
In 1970, Australia was a desert of football hope, a cemetery of dreams where the World Cup seemed like a distant mirage. The Socceroos, the Australian national team, were not heroes. They were castaways trying to build a raft from the remains of their own ambitions. Tours to reach Mexico in 1970. They needed to survive a confrontation in the worst possible conditions against Rhodesia in a place that looked like the end of the world. Mozambique. Have you ever imagined traveling to the heart of Africa with your professional life hanging by a thread? That was the reality for the Australians. Rhodesia, a tough and ruthless team, played at home, or at least in hostile territory where heat and humidity worked against the visitors. Australia was desperate, and desperation, as you know, opens doors that reason keeps locked with 7 keys. Then someone, no one knows exactly who, had a big idea, an idea that would cross decades and become legend. Why trust only your player's skill if you can ask for help from forces that don't obey the rules of sports? The Australians consulted a local sorcerer, a man who claimed to speak with the dead and move luck as easily as moving fingers. The sorcerer listened to the request and accepted the job. He didn't ask for much in return, just fair payment for what he called spiritual intervention. On the night before the game, he walked alone to the field. Under the weak, sickly moonlight of Mozambique, he buried curses near the opposing goals. What exactly did he bury? Animal bones, flasks with dark liquids, and words in a language no one dared to repeat. The result was brutal. Australia beat Rhodesia 3-1. A victory so unexpected that the players themselves didn't know whether to celebrate or feel afraid. They had made it. They were still alive in the competition. The spell worked perfectly, like a bulldozer running over the logic of football. Then came the problem that everyone who deals with the supernatural knows well, the moment to pay the bill. The sorcerer asked for the agreed amount, but the Australian delegation, perhaps out of greed, perhaps out of pure colonial prejudice, decided they wouldn't pay. They boarded the plane, left Mozambique behind, and believed the story was over. They were utterly wrong. The sorcerer, feeling the contempt, did what any offended professional would do. He reversed the spell. The magic that protected the Australian goals was undone and reassembled against them. It wasn't just a defeat that he planted, it was a haunting. He condemned Australia to a 32-year drought without setting foot in a World Cup. 3 decades and 2 years of inexplicable failures, of ridiculous eliminations, of own goals at the most crucial moments. From that day on, the Socceroos entered the field carrying an invisible anchor, a weight that no one saw but everyone felt. And you know what's worse? No one spoke about the curse openly. It was a dirty secret, a ghost that the players preferred to ignore. But bad luck doesn't care about your silence. It works while you sleep, while you train, while you swear everything will get better. Australia tried everything. They changed coaches, players, tactical schemes, but the result was always the same. A grotesque fatality stopped them from advancing. Qualifiers lost in stoppage time. Penalties given to the opponent in the final minutes. Inexplicable injuries on the eve of decisive games. It was as if the team was cursed to run in circles inside a maze with no exit, always watching the light of qualification go out. The 70s passed. The 80s too. The 90s arrived and left without mercy. 3 decades of pain, and the World Cup always there, so close and so far. Can you imagine an entire nation watching this sports horror film without being able to change the channel? Well, spook. It was only in 2004, when the drought was bordering on ridiculous, that someone decided to do what should have been done 34 years earlier: go back to Mozambique. An Australian filmmaker named Robert de Bortoli, obsessed with the story, embarked on a journey back to the same place where the seed of disgrace was planted. He didn't bring players, coaches, or officials. He brought cameras and one simple question: how do you undo something that should never have been done? Upon arriving in Mozambique, de Bortoli didn't look for the original sorcerer. That man was already dead, or at least lost to time. He found a new healer, someone who still practiced the old rituals, someone who believed that spiritual debts can be paid with very high interest. The healer listened to the story and agreed to try to break the curse. He asked for a sacrifice, not just of animals, but of pride. The ritual took place at dusk. The healer burned herbs, dug up what remained of the old bindings, and spoke words that sealed a new contract. This time, Australia paid. It's not known how much, or with what, but the transaction was completed. The debt from 1970 was finally settled. And then, the following year, in 2005, what many called a miracle happened, but what might have just been the end of a 3-decade default. Australia qualified for the 2006 World Cup in Germany. After 32 years of exile, the Socceroos were back on the big stage. The news spread like wildfire. The curse had been broken. The sorcerer of Mozambique, even dead, had finally been obeyed. State the Australian team, now free from the haunting, achieved something no other Australian team had achieved in an entire generation. And here comes the question that refuses to stay quiet. If the spell really worked for that long, what else in football could be explained by forces not found in statistics? You, the viewer, have you ever stopped to think about how many silent curses might be acting on your favorite team right now? The story of Australia is not an isolated case. It's a warning. Dealing with what you don't understand can bring you a victory today and a debt that lasts 32 years. In the second part, we will detail the curse-breaking ritual, the immediate consequences for Australian football, and what it all means for you watching back. Because if there's one thing this story teaches, it's that the supernatural doesn't like deadbeats, and football, my friend, is the most spiritual sport on the planet. You will see how the qualification for 2006 was just the beginning of a new era, and how the sorcerer's shadow can still be seen on the fields to this day. Don't go away. The second part is denser, darker, and includes a detail that will make you look at your team's next match with different eyes. The ritual that filmmaker Robert de Bortoli witnessed in Mozambique was not a simple old lady's prayer. It was a spiritual surgery on a 34-year-old body. The Mozambican healer drew circles on the ground with red powder, the same powder supposedly used by the original sorcerer in 1970. He asked de Bortoli to strip himself of Western arrogance and watch in absolute silence, because any wrong word could refound the curse instead of breaking it. Cinematic. The ritual involved the sacrifice of a black chicken, whose blood was used to smear the goalposts of an improvised goal set up right there in the village. As the blood dried, the healer recited names of Australian players who hadn't even been born when the debt was incurred. The logic was brutal but simple. The curse could only be undone on the same territory where it was made, with the same energy, but in the opposite direction. De Bortoli filmed everything, but for a long time he did not reveal the complete images. There was a real fear that exposing the ritual could reactivate something. Payment was made in cash, yes, but also in objects the healer requested, including an old Socceroo shirt and a piece of wood from an old goalpost. With the ritual complete, de Bortoli returned to Australia with a tape in his hand and a question in his head. Had the curse really ended, or was it just theater? The answer came less than a year later, during the qualifiers for the 2006 World Cup. Australia faced Uruguay in the most tense confrontation in its history. The first leg, in Montevideo, was a nightmare. The Australians lost 1-0, and it seemed the curse had just changed its address. But in the second leg, in Sydney, something strange happened. The entire stadium vibrated with an energy that the older fans described as different from anything they had ever seen. Australia won 1-0 in regular time and forced penalties. And it was in the penalties that the story took the Haunting's last breath. Australian goalkeeper Mark Schwarzer saved 2 consecutive shots, 2 saves that statistics cannot explain, but that superstition embraces tightly. Australia had qualified. 32 years later, the spell had been undone. The team cried on the field like someone waking from a 3-decade coma. The world press, of course, treated the curse story as folk legend, an anecdote to fill the halftime break. But the players on the field knew. They felt something break during that game, as if an invisible rope had been cut by a cold knife. And the proof that the curse was real is not in the past, it's in what happened afterward. From 2006 on, Australia never again stayed out of a World Cup for so long. They qualified for 2010, for 2014, for 2018, and for 2022. The 32-year drought was replaced by a sequence of almost automatic appearances. Coincidence? Maybe. But do you really believe in coincidences when the subject is a debt to a Mozambican sorcerer burying bones in the dark? What makes this story even more frightening is the silence surrounding it. For decades, the Australian Football Federation never publicly admitted that the episode happened. Documents were lost, interviews were denied. Players from that era died without telling everything they saw that night in Mozambique. It's as if there is a pact not to talk about this subject, as if acknowledging the curse would risk bringing it back. But filmmaker De Bortoli did not remain silent. In 2005, he released a documentary called The Distance, which showed part of the journey to break the spell. Watching that film is like watching someone defuse a bomb while telling a joke. The tension is physical, almost unbearable. And he reveals a detail that few people know. The original sorcerer not only reversed the curse, he tied it to a specific object, a ball used in the 1970 match. That ball was supposedly taken to Australia by an official who kept it as a personal trophy. For 32 years, that ball was inside the country, feeding the curse from the inside out. When De Bortoli discovered this, he managed to have the ball returned to Mozambique and buried on the same field where it all began. The curse-breaking ritual, therefore, was not just about paying the healer. It was about returning what should never have been taken. This completely changes your understanding of this story, doesn't it? The curse was not just about not paying. It was about stealing a piece of the magic and thinking no one would notice. And now comes the most disturbing part. After breaking the curse, the filmmaker tried to find the descendants of the original sorcerer to formally ask for forgiveness. He located a granddaughter who still lived in the region. She refused to receive him. She only sent a message. The old man used to say that the debt is paid until the 4th generation. This means the curse may have only been postponed, not extinguished. That the 32 years were a sentence, but not the final judgment. Since 2006, Australia has qualified, but has never advanced past the round of 16. Never. Not in the good World Cups, not in the easy ones. There is an invisible barrier that the Australian national team cannot cross, a glass wall that always appears at the knockout stage. Older fans already whisper that the curse was not broken, only remodeled. That the sorcerer accepted the payment but did not remove the bad luck, only reduced it. Do you begin to see the size of the hole in this story? Australia may be living through a spiritual truce, not a complete liberation. And if that is the case, the only way to truly end the curse would be for an Australian born in Mozambique to wear the Sorcerer shirt and score a goal in the World Cup final. Does it sound absurd? Yes. But we are talking about a sorcerer who buried a curse on a football field in 1970, and it lasted 32 years. The line between the absurd and the real in this story is as thin as the penalty line that qualified Australia in 2005. So, the next time you watch a Socceroos game in a World Cup, pay attention to the behavior of the fans, the eyes of the players, the way the ball refuses to go in. Maybe you are seeing the remnants of a bad deal between a desperate team and a man who spoke to the dead at midnight in Mozambique. And maybe, just maybe, the scariest story in football is not about doping or corruption or violence, but about an unpaid debt that refuses to die. Australia paid. The sorcerer accepted. But the universe, my friend, has a long memory and compound interest. Now tell me, after hearing this entire story, do you still trust the scoreboard? Do you still believe the better team always wins? Think about that the next time your club loses an impossible game. Think about Mozambique. Think about the sorcerer. And think about what might be buried underneath your favorite field.
Did you like this mystery? And what is your theory? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, then like and share. I'm Merc, and I'll be waiting for you in the next mystery.